Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for testifying today. I graduated in the top of my medical school class, but barely passed econometrics at West Point, so I deeply respect you and your colleagues. I want to digress a second and discuss school closures, which I and many other physicians, educators, and behavioralists believe have drastically harmed our children. We should follow the science, and as a physician, I know the science is definitive. The CDC has stressed the importance of kids returning to school, saying, and I quote, "The harms attributed to closed schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children in both the short and long term are well known and significant," end quote. There's already extensive research on the summer slide. According to the Northwest Evaluation Association, in the summer following third grade, students lose nearly 20% of their school year gains in reading and 27% in math. By the summer after their seventh grade, students lose an average of 39% of their school year gains in reading and 50% of their school year gains in math, perhaps explaining my difficulty in econometrics. Imagine the detriment a year-long slide will have on our children. We can't allow this to happen. School closures also endanger the emotional and mental health of children. A recent article published in the Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry found that post-traumatic stress scores were 4 times higher in parents and children in quarantine than those not in quarantine. The CDC has added that suicides are through the roof. And in one of the scientific journals that I read as an emergency physician, just last month, the shutdowns showed an enormous increase in drug overdose and addiction at all ages. Yet, Democrats continue to call for more school closures. They seem willing to put children and parents through all of this, despite the fact that of the 587,948 children diagnosed with COVID, only 103 have died, and nearly all of them had significant medical comorbidities. Now compare that to over 6,000 suicides a year in children, 4,000 who die a year in automobile crashes, but the left is clearly not stopping children from riding in cars. There's no question we know which comorbidities put people at higher risk for COVID. We can protect at-risk children with virtual learning while letting the rest go back to in-person school. We hear the left railing about science and numbers. Well, they're clearly ignoring them to keep schools closed, and the consequences are significant. Chairman Powell, I would like to ask you, and I've kind of shared a little bit of the medical side of this, what are the economic impacts on these school closures?
Well, let me say again that these decisions get made, a lot of them at the local level, and that's I imagine you would agree that that's appropriate. You want these decisions, this is people's lives, it's their kids, and to the extent they get made as close as possible to them, that makes a lot of sense to me anyway.
I'm asking you to elaborate for us on the economic impact. What's the impact to the economy on these school closures? I just shared that there's an increase in suicide, there's an increase in opioids, there's only 103 have died out of 580,000 that have been diagnosed. I can share those numbers. I'm a physician. I'm asking you the economic impact of all these closures.
And I just want to make it clear that I do not have a judgment on the pace of school closures whatsoever. I don't have one, and I wouldn't say if I did. But, just as a straightforward matter, if the kids are home, then some of the parents are going to stay out of the workforce, and lots of people have tried to quantify that. I don't have an estimate of it, but parents who have to stay home to take care of their kids will be there. As to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, honestly, it has to do with the safety of kids and teachers too, as well. The teachers are probably much more at risk than the young kids are, I imagine. But nonetheless, these are decisions that are really not for the Fed. And
now, I understand the decision on whether or not to open a school. I was trying to get, and you implied a little bit there, as parents are staying home, that's a decrease in economic output, and therefore it has a downstream effect in our economy. So there is an economic impact as well as the behavioral impact that the CDC has highlighted, the increase in suicides, overdoses, all that stuff. in light of 103 deaths out of 587,000 that have been diagnosed. Mr. Chairman, looks like I'm out of time, so I yield.